One of the reasons that allows Automation Direct to offer great products and services can be contributed to our Federation partners. One of these partners is Interconnecting Automation, headed by Mr. Doug Bell. Doug was instrumental in providing input when Automation Direct was formed, and he soon took the lead in providing training excellence to our customers covering the products that we offer. Today we have the pleasure of talking to Doug so we can learn more about his company and the services that he provides. Please join us over in the auditorium as we catch up with Doug while he's finishing up a training seminar. Doug, I want to thank you for coming in here and spend a couple of minutes with us. We're going to ask some questions and find out a little bit about your background and maybe how you got started in the automation industry. Can you tell us about your approach to it? You know, what got you started? Maybe a little bit on how you started your company and the no BS technique of training.
Sure. Well, I started out, I was always interested in electricity as a kid. And I went to a high school in Milwaukee that was all boys. And it was a trade school, and they had machine shops, electric shops, and carpentry shops, and automobile shops. They were big shops. I mean, the first year we bent pipe and pulled wires. We actually had our own house to wire. Each student in an electric shop wired their own house. The second year was all DC motors and generators. The third year was all AC motors and generators, and the fourth year was control. And then Milwaukee, being the town that it was, we have a lot of heavy industry there, such as Harnisch-Vager and Kearney and Trecker and Bucyrus-Erie. And they would come down to the trade school and say to the instructors, we need 3 electricians. So they would say, you're going to work there. And you didn't say no, you took the job. I happened to get picked for a foundry, which was a dirty, grimy environment, but I learned a lot. Bending pipe and pulling wires and big control relay panels with 3 inches of thick dust in them from all the sand. And I did that for about 3 years, decided that wasn't for me. So I was looking for a job, and there was an ad in the paper for a bottle cap plant where they made bottle caps for soda bottles and beer bottles. So I went and applied there, and very clean plant because it's a food product. Right. It's a nice clean environment. It's high speed though. They made 25 million a day. And they also made cans, not at our plant, but at the corporate headquarters. They had 300 some plants around the world. So we were just one entity out of the whole corporation. And as they phased it down, if you look around today, there's not many cans left. I mean, there's not many bottles left. It's mostly cans or plastic. I took a corporate job with them, traveling around the world, putting up plants or troubleshooting lines, debugging lines. So you learn real quick what PLCs are, because depending on what country you go to, they'll have a different brand, because some countries are very brand specific. Right. After doing that for 3 years, I decided to get out of that because I didn't like the full-time travel. So Cutler Hammer was starting up a brand new group. And Cutler Hammer is based in Milwaukee, like Alan Bradley is. And they started a group called the Apollo Project, and it was PC-based control. So I worked on PC-based control with them for 2 years using DeviceNet and a software called Steeplechase, flow charting software. And it was good. We developed the product line, and the group I was in wrote the specs and stuff, and also went out and installed the products at facilities. But I could see it wasn't going to take off real big. Right. And what happened was Cutler Hammer made you go to 2 courses a year. It didn't matter what it was in. They wanted you to go to 2 classes a year. So I never really understood the half slot, full slot, 2 slot addressing of Alan Bradley. So I went to an Alan Bradley course, and I was sitting in this course, and it was terrible. We had 4 guys and 1 trainer, and the whole day was on 1 timer. So I was sitting in the back of the room thinking, I could do this, and a light bulb went on. So that evening, actually it was that evening, I called Tim, who I knew from my past life, and said, I'd like to have dinner with you. And I had dinner with him a couple weeks later, and we sat down and told him what I had for an idea, and he said, go for it. And that's kind of how the whole thing got going. But one thing I base it all on is that the no BS part is, I don't want to sell people anything. Right. I want to train them on the product so they can use the product and make their job easier. That's kind of where that comes from.
So a little bit about your company is Interconnecting Automation, and a lot of our customers don't know, but you offer training for Automation Direct products, our PLCs. Automation Direct, unlike some of the other PLC resellers or manufacturers, we don't have our own training. You actually take care of it for us. But you're like a very tight partner with Automation Direct Federation Partner. Yes. So that's how that ties together.
That's correct. At the dinner that night, that's one of the things Tim said. He made a comment to me, because I was working at Cutler Hammer at the time. He said, companies like you think you do everything well, you do nothing well. do one thing and do it well. If you're going to do training, Doug, make sure you give a good class. Don't try to do training and consulting and panel building and everything else. Just do one thing and do it well.
Right.
That's kind of what he's focused your company on, is one thing.
I have to ask, you know, you've been in the industry for a while, you've worked with a lot of different PLCs. At what point did you notice or did you start working with Koyo PLCs, which is, you know, what we sell, is Koyo branded PLCs. Where did you see those first, and you know, how'd you get started with them?
Well, we were using a PLC at the bottle cap plant from Microswitch. A lot of people aren't even aware Microswitch made a PLC at one time, but it's been obsolete for 20 years. And they brought it out, and 3 years later they obsoleted it. So I got stuck in this quagmire, and I invited all the vendors in. Allen Bradley, Siemens, Cutler Hammer, everybody came in showing me their wares. And the Texas Instruments guys brought in this 405 product. And he gave me the software, and I played with it for a little while, and it was very easy to use. So we kind of switched the corporation over from the Microswitch stuff that we were sticking our toe in the water with. We didn't have a lot of them, and we only had like 100 of them installed around the corporation.
Which is a lot.
It's a lot, but it wasn't a tremendous amount. And we switched over to the 405. And that's when I first started working with the Koyo PLCs, was under the TI days.
Right. And I noticed that your training class back here, you've got little training kits for all of the students in here, and you've basically got the same hardware. It's you know, not the old 405, but it's a newer version of that 405.
Yes, it is. It's the same chassis, but it's got the new CPU that can do the floating point math and the PID and the analog cards, so we can do PID simulation and everything. So it's still the 405 footprint,
right? But
it's got the newer Ethernet cards in it and such for remote I/O and Ethernet communications and so on.
At one point, I understand that Tim Holman had contacted you. He was going to start up a company and sell the Koyo PLCs directly, and he asked for your input since you had been a end user of the PLCs. Do you remember what kind of input or suggestions you might have had for him? Or
yeah, I remember it well. We had used the 405 product extensively, and Texas Instruments was brought out by Siemens Corporation, and the local salesmen and other salesmen from other companies were giving me rumors that Siemens was going to discontinue the Koyo products. And I was putting up a brand new plant in Chicago for our corporation, and I didn't want, last thing I wanted to do was put up a brand new plant with PLCs that were going to be announced would be obsolete in, say, 6 months or something.
Right.
I kept trying to contact Koyo in Japan. In the meantime, I was making other arrangements with GE to use their PLC. One day I got a call from Tim, and he said, we're working on some things to make the product better and cheaper and easier to read the manuals and better service and support and such. And I remember telling him clearly, in 10 years we're either going to read about you in Forbes or you'll be out of business, because nobody's ever tried selling PLCs through the mail. And but I think you're going to do well.
At what point in your life or in your career did you decide to just quit your job and start out, you know, training in automation controls, and what did you do to control the anxiety and the nerves of just jumping out there?
It wasn't easy. I was at Cutler Hammer, and I had gone through this Allen Bradley course, and the light went on that night that I could do this. Went back and started figuring out what laptops would cost and to build trainers, and I had contacted Tim. He was already in business for 2 years under PLC Direct, and my wife and I pretty much made a decision we were going to do it. But I don't think we slept but about 4 hours a night for the first 6 months. And mostly what I got from the PLC Direct folks was, don't worry about it, it'll work.
I'm trying to understand, if I was going to start a training program with, you know, you got equipment, you got locations, travel, materials, you know, getting schedules and stuff like that. What does it actually take to get all that rolling? And, you know, do you have suggestions of?
Tremendous effort. It was tremendous effort. We basically, when I was at the course that triggered me to do this, the instructor had 4 gentlemen on one trainer. We spent the whole day on one timer. We spent 8 hours of training on one timer. Wow. And I was fit to be tied.
Wow.
And I said, this guy has never been in a factory in his life. He's reading me the book. I could have stayed home and read the book. I didn't have to be away from home to do this. That's what triggered all this to happen. So I kind of took the things in the courses that I had taken over the years to make them better. In other words, I want to be able to give people real-world examples when I'm up there, not something that I'm reading out of the book that I never did. I want to be able to tell them things that I did so that they don't do the same thing and have the same effect. If I were out in the customer seat paying for a course, what would I want to learn?
Right.
I don't want the guy to romance me and try to sell me the product. I paid for a course. Obviously, I paid to be here. I want to learn the product. I don't want you to sell me the product.
Right. Doug, what is your philosophy on teaching about PLCs and other automation industrial controls?
Well, I think we should do it. I mean, I don't think I should be up there on a PowerPoint presentation giving people slideshows. I want to put the equipment out in front of them, and let's do it. Let's program it. Let's see what happens when you put a timer in and you change the preset value and actually do it hands-on, because I guess that's how I learned.
Right.
I sat electric shop and I would program things and see what the reaction I would get out of the machine. So that's kind of how I like to teach, is put a trainer in front of you, have you sit down and actually do it. Not just teach you the theory, but actually have you sit at a laptop, write the code, download it, and see how it performs in the PLC, and see what the reaction you're going to get out of the PLC when you do it.
So would it be more beneficial if you had a traveling machine that you could bring into class?
Oh, and actually in the advanced class, we do have a small machine we set up. It's a miniature pick-and-place welding line that we have people program from scratch. And one of the things we do to them, and I tell them everybody on Tuesday of the advanced class the same thing, you're not going to see it until Thursday at 8 o'clock. Because I have a saying, it's called baptism by fire. Here's the machine, make it work.
Tell us how your company's actually evolved from, you started with classroom training, and you know, what are you doing now, or what other things are you offering? I know you have many different lines of products.
Well, what happened was, I'm not going to give a class if I can't stand up there and give it to you. I know enough about PLC, for example, I know enough about PID to stumble through it.
Right.
But to give a class on it, I'm not going to do that, because that would go back to me reading you the book. So I hired Cecil Smith to do the PID courses, because he's a very well-known expert in PID. Quite a few years back, Andy here was after me to do tapes, VHS tapes. And I was adamant I wasn't going to do no tapes, because I was concerned that would kill the courses that we give.
Right.
So we finally, after they brought the 05 out for $99, I says, now I could do a course and also include hardware with it, so that I'm using the hardware in the videotape that you get with the videotape, and you follow along step by step, and we take you from linking up with the PLC to creating a project to creating rungs of code and so on.
Right.
So it was more interactive. I just, personally, I can't see shooting a video and just kind of nodding off on it. And you're not interacting with it. So we brought it out, and it's done well. And then I would say about a year ago, we started researching the online stuff for doing online videos. And a few months ago, we turned on a website where we have libraries of videos you can go in. You can view for 30 days, as many times as you want to view, for a very low fee. In the very near future, we're going to turn all that off, actually, and we've purchased software to make a true school campus, online campus, where you will register with the campus, and then there'll be multiple courses you can take, just like you were going to a university or a trade school, an online tech school. And each course will be offered twice. One will be just the pure videos, if that's all you want to do is sit down and watch videos. That's what we have up there now. We're going to offer that as a course, but the second version of it will be where you can take quizzes and you can leave messages on a forum, and there'll be times when I'm online you can chat with me if you have a question. And at the end of the course, if you pass all the quizzes properly, you'll be able to print out your own certificate and everything at the end of it.
You get a lot of customers. Tell me the difference between customers. You know, do you get a lot of customers with no experience at all? Do you get some that have a lot of experience and just want to learn a different brand of PLCs? You know, what kind of students are you seeing in your class training?
Well, in the intro class, we get a lot of beginners. They, with the consolidation in the industry and people losing jobs and people combining jobs, we're getting mechanical guys who saw the PLC in their past in the cabinet, but they don't know anything about it.
Right.
So they come to the class and they know nothing about it. Now we get a few that have a little bit of background in it. The advanced class, we see people that are going to be writing programs from scratch. The introductory class that we offer, that's good for maintenance people and people want to troubleshoot, maybe add a couple rungs of code, change a timer, change a counter, just to give you a good solid foundation on how it works.
Right.
Then the advanced class actually teaches you to program from scratch. As I said, the third day you program a machine from scratch. But the majority of the people that come to the intro class, I would say actually about 80%, get enough out of that class that they can do their maintenance work in the plant and the troubleshooting and debugging that they need to do.
So do you see with industry evolving, as you know, you've mentioned in some of the other answers that you've given us, industry is constantly just changing and evolving. Do you see an increase in customers needing more PLC or automation knowledge?
Oh yes, the for example, the Seymour touch panels and such that you guys have. It's kind of interesting because years ago, everybody wanted to know how the PLC worked. Everybody wanted in the PLC and how to program it and debug it and such. Today, everybody wants to see the glitz and the glamour. They want to see the wheels spinning on the screen and the conveyors going by with boxes and so on. So that's what the touch panels bring to the market. A lot of people forget about the PLC. That's the workhorse. That's what runs the machines, turns the motors on and off, and the valves on and off. Everybody likes the glitz and the glamour. So yes, there's a considerable amount of people requesting more and more training on the HMIs and the graphical user interface softwares and such.
I noticed that when I went through college, you know, they brought out we had some hardware that we were learning on, and it seems like now you hear of the same stuff that are in middle schools and even high schools. So it seems like they're training more people, you know, people younger ages to do the same stuff now.
Actually, it's kind of interesting you brought that up. Last week we received 2 orders for our DVD kit that comes with the PLC for 2 high schools. Yeah. One was in Tennessee and one was out in Connecticut. I was shocked. That's not the first ones we've sold to high schools, but 2 in 1 week shocked us a little bit because I mean, we may get 1 every couple weeks from a high school, but we just had it happen again last week for high school level people. So they must be teaching it in the shops in the school, the control engines.
How does your training methods, how are they much better than some of the competitors' training methods, or what have you heard maybe in industry that, you know, how much better you're doing things than somebody else?
Well, I like to keep it hands-on, and I like to keep it real world. I don't want to talk about theory because theory is in a book. Right. And I want to show them how it happens right in front of them, so when they program it, they get the reaction out of the PLC, they know what to expect. Actually, like I said earlier, that's one of the things that dragged me into this was I was at a course that it was a terrible course. And quite a few times I've had customers come up to me after the course thanking me for the real world examples, such as a conveyor with cans going down. You want to track the cans, and we actually put it up there on the whiteboard and show them how the cans go down the conveyor, and we show them how they actually follow through in the PLC, so they can relate to the real world and the logical world in the CPU, which is a real world application, not some theoretical thing.
You know, it's always tough when you ask somebody, well, what does this instruction apply to? Well, it's right here in the book. You know, I want to know the machine to understand what it's do, you know.
Exactly. That's the example with the conveyor is a shift register. It's a true example how we used to track cans at a brewery down a conveyor and reject the can that was underfilled or overfilled. Right. And when we show it to them, you can see the lights go on in their head that makes sense. We're tracking the 1s and 0s in the memory, just like we're tracking the good and bad on a conveyor.
Okay, and we're getting close to the end, so one of my favorite questions is, since you've been in industry for so long and you've seen a lot of machines and a lot of applications, give me some examples of, say, a simple application or a simple machine using PLCs and also a more complex or a very complex machine?
Well, actually, I saw one today. I was coming here, and right on the toll road 400, there's a little toll gate that goes up and down. It's got a little 105 in it, AutomationDirect PLC. With a little banner photo eye. It's one of the simplest applications you can see. Little gate that goes up and down and lets the car through. Some of the more complex ones are refineries. I was at a refinery down in Louisiana where they're using 205s, and they're actually tying it into their DCS system, backdooring it because they can't get the old DCS parts anymore. So they're taking 205 chassis and sticking them in over Ethernet and using these 205s to do all their PID loop controls and such. Another example is a roller coaster. If you actually go in and look at the control scheme behind a roller coaster at like a Six Flags Great America, it's extremely complex. They have sensors along the conveyor, and they're monitoring the velocity of the car as it's going by, so you know exactly how much analog signal to apply to the brakes to stop you right at the right place so you can get out and walk off. Very, very complex control going on in those machines. So.
Well, that about wraps it up for our discussion here with Doug Bell from Interconnecting Automation. I want to thank Doug for coming in and spending some time and giving us a little background about how all this got started. It's always very interesting to talk to our Federation partners and learn about their backgrounds. And If you have any more, if you want to look up some more stuff on interconnecting automation, they have a website, and Doug Bell's got all his training materials, his classes, his online videos, and like I said, he's got some new stuff coming out, so keep an eye open for that. So thanks, Doug.
Thank you.